Hello guys, here is Lydia and that is my channel Panakota. And today we are in a historical place again in Nizhniy Novgorod, and that is Nizhniy Novgorod Fair. Well, there was a saying in Russia that Moscow is the heart of the country, St. Petersburg is the head of it, and Nizhniy Novgorod is its pocket. Why it was the pocket of Russia? We discovered today. Nizhniy Novgorod is very conveniently located at the confluence of the large Volga and Oka rivers. In addition, the Volga was the only waterway connecting the west and the east. There was also a railway in Nizhniy Novgorod later, so from here you could get to the Caucasus, Persia, Turkey, Central Asia, and even India and China. Due to this location, trade has always been in full swing in the city. Archaeologists have found Arab and Byzantine artifacts indicating trade ties with the East back in the 13th, 14th centuries. The first documented fairs and meetings of merchants have been known since the 16th century here. At first, fairs were held not in Nizhny, but downstream of the Volga, near the walls of the Makarev monastery. They were temporary and lasted for 1 or 2 days. At the beginning of the 19th century, it became clear that the monastery didn't have enough space for everyone. Besides, the temporary wooden shopping malls burned down. By that time, the Nizhniy Novgorod Fair was already incredibly important and brought huge amount of money to the state treasury. The fair was moved to Nizhniy Novgorod itself, to the confluence of the Volga and Oka. Emperor Alexander I himself postponed the renovation of his own winter palace in order to allocate 6 million rubles for the construction of a new building for the fair. To check the best options for the location of the trade place, Augustin Betancourt, a Spanish engineer in the Russian service, head of the Committee of Building and Hydraulic Works, was sent to Nizhniy Novgorod. Betancourt had to compare the possible locations of the fair. In Nizhniy Novgorod, it was proposed to place it either on the right bank of the Volga or on the left, low bank of the river. Betancourt chose the latter option, since the left bank was convenient from the point of view of loading and unloading goods. Betancourt, together with the architect Auguste Montferrand, created a complex of buildings for the Nizhniy Novgorod Fair. So that the guest house wouldn't be flooded with water in high water, Betancourt built it on an artificial embankment. Trade in the stone guest house, decorated with a portico with columns, first began on the 15th of July in 1822. Since then, the Nizhniy Novgorod Fair has always opened on July the 13th and ended on the 25th of August with the lowering of flags. On the ground floor of the original main house of the Nizhniy Novgorod Fair, there was all the necessary infrastructure: post office, pharmacy, bank, restaurant, police, governor's office. In addition, the building housed an assembly hall with a formal dining room and living rooms, where balls and concerts for the nobility were held. And the shopping malls consisted of 48 two-story commercial buildings, each of which housed shops at the bottom, and their tenants lived at the top. In 1817, the costs of goods brought to the Nizhniy Novgorod Fair amounted to 24.1 million rubles, and in 1850 it reached already 56 million rubles. That was more than 60% of the total costs of goods arriving in Russia. Here we come to the point why it was the pocket of Russia. In the 1840s, about 15,000 merchants came to the fair annually, including about 500 merchants from Western Europe and America, 200 merchants from Central Asia. In August, when trade was especially active, up to 200,000 people gathered at the fair. And in 1874, up to 250,000 people were at the fair every day, while the population of Nizhny Novgorod was about 45,000 residents only. According to Betancourt projects, 1.5-kilometer long bypass canal was created around Gostinny Dvor, which protected the fair from fire. The availability of water allowed Betancourt to arrange the first modern sewage system in Europe. In 1860 and 1870, the fair territory was improved, including a water supply system with the installation of fountains in front of the Spassky Cathedral and the main building. The fair was a very progressive event because it brought lots of progressive infrastructure to the city. It was the meeting point of many thousands of people, and for this meeting point and for numerous guests of the cities from Asia and Europe, a lot of infrastructure was needed. That's why it was the place where the first sewage system in Europe appeared, the system which we know in reality at the moment. Then it was also the place where theatrical performances were held, and also it was here then the next year after appearance of cinematography in the world, it was the place where the first movies were shown here in Nizhny Novgorod on Nizhny Novgorod Fair. So it was just a very important event, not only for the Russian Empire at that time, but also for Europe as well, since the amount of money which came here was absolutely huge, and Nizhny Novgorod Fair, in fact, didn't have any competitors in size and in importance. Since the middle of the 19th century, the fair officially lasted a little bit more than 1 month, but in fact, the trade lasted from July to September. The fair was a whole holiday for the city. More than 200,000 people arrived to Nizhny Novgorod at the time of the trade. Circus, theater, and musicians worked. In the 1870s and 80s, electricity and running water appeared on the territory of the fair. The fair had a positive effect on the whole city. Nizhny Novgorod had a convenient infrastructure. Hotels and inns were actively built. One of the first trams in Russia was launched here in 1896. The main religious building and architectural dominant was the Spassky Old Market Cathedral, built by architect Auguste Montferrand, the same architect who built St. Isaac's Cathedral in St. Petersburg. But since the fair attracted traders not only from Russia, but also from Europe and Asia, an Armenian Gregorian church and a mosque were erected at the Nizhny Novgorod Fair. Nizhny Novgorod was a real pocket of Russia, and in 1896 was honored to host the 16th All-Russian Industrial and Art Exhibition. It was the most ambitious exhibition in the history of the country. The most interesting novelties were presented here. For example, the first Russian car of Yakovlev. The inventor of radio, Alexander Popov, demonstrated a device designed by him to record electrical discharges in the atmosphere. Dmitry Mendeleev publicly conducted chemical experiments. Biologist Timoryazov showed experiments on growing plants in greenhouses. The pearl of the Siberian department was a grotto made of semi-precious stones with a buste of the emperor. A real tea house was set up on the terrace of the Central Asian Department building. Famous musicians such as Fyodor Shalyapin also performed at the fair. Here at the Nizhny Novgorod Fair, the next year after its appearance in the world, cinematography appeared. a whole mini city at Strelka. The international recognition of the Nizhniy Novgorod Fair is evidenced by the fact that in 1866 the US Embassy visited it in order to strengthen trade with Russia. The development of shipping contributed to the growth of trade turnover at the fair. In 1876, the number of steam vessels increased to 500. The fate of the Nizhniy Novgorod Fair had its ups and downs. Its heyday occurred in the second half of the 19th century. In 1913, Emperor Nikolai II visited Nizhniy Novgorod. For the 300th anniversary of the Romanov house, a state bank was built on Большая Покровская Street, at the opening of which the Tsar was present. During the visit, the emperor met with the chairman of the fair committee Salaskin and approved the initiative of merchants to hold the 18th All-Russian Industrial Exhibition in Nizhny Novgorod in 1917. It was planned to coincide with the 100th anniversary of the transfer of the fair from Makarev to Nizhny Novgorod, but the plans were not destined to come true, and we all know why. Now, the Nizhny Novgorod Fair is one of the largest exhibition complexes in Russia, a venue for congresses and meetings. Festivals and celebrations are held here. In winter, it is the center of New Year's festivities in Nizhny Novgorod. An ice rink, Christmas trade, carousel rides are made here. Welcome to the Nizhny Novgorod Fair.